Hello and welcome to Delta College Impact. I'm Roger Wally, your host for today's program. And I'm sure some of you regular viewers are saying, hey, what's up? He's wearing a tie today. Well, part of it's because of our special guest. We have President Sam Schauerman, our interim president here at Delta College, joining us today to talk about Delta and his experiences. Sam, let me begin by saying welcome to Impact.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you here, and I know when we talk about experiences with community colleges, you had a lot.
A little over 40 years.
That's amazing when you think about it, because that takes you back to the early 60s.
Yes, a few years back. I don't know that.
I know. And one of the things I know that has been of interest to our community is the fact that as an interim president, you are really playing a role of trying to link the college from our previous president, Ed Gould, and our future president. How do you see the role of an interim president?
The interim president, in my view, is one who begins to look at processes that are in place and suggests some changes. The one thing you have to be careful about is not making some decisions or moving things in a way that they will interfere with a new president coming in. So generally processes in place on most campuses can stand a little work, rejuvenation, a little change, and you don't change wholesale. You look at it a little bit at a time.
And I know one of the great things is you've talked about your 40 years of experience. You had 30, I'm sure, wonderful years at El Camino College down in Southern California.
Correct.
And you might walk us through your progression as you started at the college, and staying for 30 years is pretty impressive.
It's very unusual, but you know, I met a faculty member here the other day who's been here over 30 years, so it happens. But I was involved in community colleges in Colorado, and I decided that I wanted to move up into a presidency and I needed to go get a degree. So I came to California to go to UCLA to work on a doctorate under B. Lamar Johnson, and got a part-time job at El Camino, and then I went into a full-time position as Dean of Physical Sciences. And I was in that position for 10 or so years, and then I moved into the VP of Academic Affairs, and then I eventually got the presidency. So I was president there the last 8 years before I retired.
And I know that's not easy to do, because I know in our last presidential search, pretty competitive being selected president of a college, and especially a college that is your native college, because they know all your little warts and all the little challenges that they see.
I agree. Anytime you make a decision, you lose a few people off of that because they feel like that was a bad decision. Then you got the supporters, but yeah, I feel good about the fact that it happened. But and it was a good college, and I'm very happy to have been there for 30 years.
Oh, I know. Now, you started as a math instructor.
Correct.
And so I'm sure when you sat back, and a lot of our students and people watching are thinking about careers in education, I guess back you said, hey, I wanted to be a teacher, and that was quite an investment of your career at that point in time.
Yes, actually, that started in high school. In high school, we had a program where we were allowing students to look at careers, make some decisions. And I had made the decision that I wanted to get into math and science. And looking at what you could do with that, teaching was kind of at the top of the list. So I started off in college thinking I wanted to be a college math teacher. And that's what happened. So, you know, I feel a little sorry for some of today's youngsters not having that goal to begin with, because I have a son who had a lot of problems trying to make a decision about what he wanted to do with his life. And it really holds things back a little bit. On the other hand, I think that there's some value in not rushing into it. So there's good and bad both ways.
I know one of the things that we have here at Delta College is the new teacher track program, and we have the MESA program, which is encouraging students to get into the science and math area. I'm sure you have to feel good to see all the new emphasis on becoming a teacher and the value in that profession.
No question. I think we need a lot of good teachers, and you know, it starts all the way at the elementary school level and goes right on up through the university. So, and community colleges really pride themselves on good teaching, which it's been my experience that that's what you find at the community college. Excellent instruction, some good faculty that are interested in student learning.
Now, one of the things, I guess there was a point in time when you said you did want to go on as an administrator, and I guess the great thing that I heard is you said you needed additional training, so that there were some different skills that you had to start to develop.
Yes.
And why'd you pick UCLA?
They had a program going, the Kellogg Foundation program. So I had a family with 3 kids at the time, and I could get a grant from them to go to college. B. Lamar Johnson was one of the publishers and the faculty members throughout the nation that was really focused on community college leadership. So that combination of things caused me to end up at UCLA.
Now, one of the things when you talk about community colleges is you spent the 30 years at El Camino, but then you retired, and I'm sure you sat back and said, well, there must be some other stuff you needed to do, and you've been doing interim work at other colleges as well, and you might talk a little bit about some of those experiences.
Well, yeah, when I decided to retire, I told several people at El Camino, the last thing I want to do is become a RENA president. And as soon as I announced my intent to retire, I got this call from Northern California from a chancellor who said, I need a president on one of my campuses. And I said, no, I don't really want to do that. She says, well, I'm going to have a meeting down there in LA. Could we have dinner together? So after I told her no twice, we met for dinner, discussed it. I went home and told my wife, I said, I think that lady needs some help. So I decided to do that job for a year. Then that was going to be the end of it. And I had a great experience. I really fell in love with a lot of the people that were on that campus and a lot of things they were doing. And one of the processes that I looked at there was a shared governance process and trying to improve that. And we didn't finalize it, but we gave the new president an opportunity to put her stamp of approval on it or make modifications. But 6 months later, I get a call from, after I left there, I get a call from Chancellor for Chabot Las Positas, and he needed somebody to come up to Chabot. And I ended up going up there for a year. Went back home, and 8 months later I get a call from San Diego. So I'm very happy living on this golf course where I retired and playing golf, but there's something about getting these telephone calls and feeling like maybe you could contribute to another institution and be supportive of improvements if you can, but at least trying to make sure that things are in pretty good shape for the next president coming in. So I've accepted that role. I'm very happy with it. But each time I do it, I go home and I play golf with my friends, and I said, that was the last one. And each time I accept another, they say, yeah, I heard that before.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I know that has to be interesting when we compare the decades of community colleges in California, you can go 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and now into the zeros, I guess you go with. How have you seen the community colleges within California change? Because I know we read in the newspaper all the time about the challenges of education, and they've been there all the time, but they've changed.
They have changed, and I suspect that probably the biggest change I've seen is the student body. When I went to El Camino in 1965, we had a primarily Caucasian student population. We had probably 500 African Americans. We may have had 1,000 Asians. I dealt with it. We had 500 Hispanics. And then while I was there in that 30 years, when I left there, we had something like 33% Caucasian and 27 or 28% Latinos. The African Americans had grown considerably, the Asian population, so that we really had a truly diverse kind of a community. That makes for some special issues in trying to educate students. When the demographics change, you have to begin to looking at other kinds of approaches to things. The other thing is bringing more and more students into the system that need special support outside the classroom. Mm-hmm. So there have been a lot of special programs that have grown up over the last 30 years that are done primarily to help students. When you look at the counseling offices, those have grown because you need counselors to be there to assist. Classrooms have changed to the extent that faculty have tried to become innovative, begin to look at different ways of providing for student learning so that students who cannot get it just strictly from lecture can begin to get the material from whatever other processes are there. Technology has just exploded in the community colleges. There was a time when many of us wanted to go to technology, but there was no funding to do that. It cost a little bit of money. And you were looking at mainframes versus the little PCs, and that has changed a lot of things. I think a lot of faculty are finding that technology has really improved their ability to educate students, and students find themselves accessible to more information. They just can go into the PCs and internet, and it really helps them in almost anything they do in the classroom. So,
well, we're going to show some scenes of Delta, and I know as you've come here, one of the keys is that you're looking at a campus that is about 40 plus years old, and we've done a great job of keeping it up, but as you say, the insides of the buildings have changed over time. And I guess one of the challenges is keeping that physical plant humming.
correct. That's a real challenge. And of course, with the finances the way they are, well, I think that becomes more and more difficult.
I know one of the things I know as you found our campus is that, we're a little different than Southern California in that we still have the trees and blue skies, but I know one of the challenges is, dealing with the evolution of technology and how things change in serving students. Now, what have been some of those surprises you've found on the Delta campus?
I think a few of the processes have surprised me. A couple of things in the negotiated contracts have surprised me, because that varies from institution to institution. I don't know that I've been surprised at all, because almost every campus I've gone to, I've found good quality faculty that are doing good things. Mm-hmm. And I find a lot of good students that are there taking advantage of that. That doesn't surprise me, because I found that to be pretty consistent. Some campuses have more problems than others in some ways, but I haven't been surprised a lot, except the campus is very difficult for me to find my way around. I did have somebody coming in to yell about the police because they took his tadpole away, and it turns out that he was fishing for the koi fish in the pond. So that kind of thing doesn't surprise me, and yet it does.
Yeah.
It comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that big surprises are here. I think that almost anything that I've run into, I could have anticipated would happen somewhere, someplace, because that's the way community colleges are.
Yeah, and I think that's really the key, is that's what community colleges are all about. And one of the things that we're going to do after we come back after a couple of brief public service messages is we're going to talk a little bit more with Dr. Schauerman about some of his perspectives of the California community college system, and talk more about Delta College and how he sees the future here at San Joaquin Delta College. Stay tuned, we'll be right back after these brief public service messages. Hello and welcome back to Delta College Impact. I'm Roger Waller, your host for the program, and on today's show we're talking with Dr. Sam Schauerman, our interim president here at Delta College. On the first half of the show we talked about Dr. Schauerman and some of his 40 years of experience in the California community college system. On the second half of the show we're going to talk a little bit about some of the current challenges facing community colleges here in California. And Sam, I might as well hit you up right off the bat with a tough one, and that's the budget. Everybody's been reading about it, and no one seems to know what to do with it, but doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good, and the governor gave us a message in January telling us what he saw as a budget and laying out his budget proposals. But what we hear from Sacramento is it's even worse than he anticipated. And some of them say that there's some things he had in there that aren't going to come to pass. For example, property taxes may not come in at that level that he indicates. Budget problems, however, are not necessarily new to the community colleges. Whenever there is a difficult time in budgets, you know, Governor Wilson went through that for a period of time. Frequently what happens is that the community colleges are faced with some difficult times to try to do all that they can to maintain programs that they already have. I remember when I first came to California when we had an ability to charge taxes, property taxes, to bring in enough money to handle our equipment needs and handle our needs for building. El Camino College never had a bonded indebtedness. They paid cash for every building they had, but they had a tax override from the 5th year that college was established. They passed a tax override that they passed every 5 years. And that was used then to build the buildings, buy the equipment. Proposition 13 came along. Now there were a lot of things happening in the budgeting process at the state level where we complain about our instructional equipment. We can't accumulate enough money to do that. So they categorically give us instructional equipment money. We talk about the students that come in that are disabled and how that's special cost. So they give us categorical money for disabled students. If you look at the dollars that are flowing into the community colleges, it looks like there's adequate money. If you look at how much is up to the discretion of the board to spend, that's a problem because this is categorical, this is categorical, this is categorical. So the categorical funds help us support the programs that we couldn't support otherwise. But they also mean that we don't have enough of the general fund money to do what we want to do. So it's been a difficult road to hoe. We had a couple of very good years when things were going well in the state. And now this year it looks like we're going to have a very difficult one. And you end up with problems like you're trying to negotiate against difficult funds. You're trying to fund programs that you think are very important for student success, and whether there's going to be money available to do that. It takes a little while to work through, and my feeling is that you have to sit down on the campus and say, look folks, this is how much money we've got. Now let's talk about what we can fund. What's the most important thing that we can do? Obviously the most important thing is to fund student learning. But that doesn't mean there aren't going to be some individual interests in some other things like my salary or this piece of equipment that I need or something else. So it's not going to be an easy year. Hopefully it'll go away, but I hear we may have to look at it for a couple of years.
I know I was going to kid you and say that, see, the new president's going to wait till you get these resolved and then...
Yeah, you know, if I could resolve them before the new president gets here, that's a plus.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think that I'm not sure that one's going to be resolved very quickly. I don't see that the state is going to necessarily have a budget in place until late summer.
And I know that leaves us sort of hanging out
Right.
there wondering what's going to happen come the
Because
fall.
you're going to start your school at first of the year, July 1, you start a new school year, and you're not going to know where your budget is. Mm-hmm. That's one of our problems in the past.
Well, I know you talked about some of the programs, and we're going to take a look at some of the lists of the Delta College programs here because we're very proud of some of those investments, as you've said, over the past that have gone on. And you can take a look at one of our computer classrooms. As you mentioned earlier, some of our new interactive classrooms with the multimedia instruction. And I think it's exciting, but as you say, it costs money, and a lot of times the money also has to be in the upkeep.
Yes, that's true. You get into the technology society, there's an upkeep or replacement cost that you just don't face otherwise, so that's very true.
Yeah, I know one of the things that we're doing here at Delta College is instituting a new electron microscopy program, and you know, it's exciting to have, but it also starts to add some additional costs onto our basic upkeeps, and that's that general fund money that you say is a little bit less discretionary than we might like to see.
That's true. And you know that you go into special programs that you've got in vocational areas, and those become very expensive programs. You limit the number of students that a faculty member is going to face. You have special equipment that you have to have. These are very expensive programs, and the vocational ed money isn't necessarily going to keep up with that kind of growth and need. So,
well, these are some shots of our human-powered vehicle, and our students have gone in competition with Berkeley and the Air Force Academy, and they do a terrific job in producing results. And we also produce some tasty results, and I know that the culinary arts, have you eaten at our student chef yet?
I plan to this week.
Excellent.
They just opened up last week, as I understand it, and I'm ready to go over there.
Exactly, which is a great spot. In our Delta Drama program, we have our performers workshops, fashion design, and a lot of exciting programs for our students to consider. And I know you talked about child development being a big support service for the changing, evolving student body. And the Delta program here, I think, is second to none.
Yeah, you know, you asked me earlier about things that might surprise me. I think the size of your early childhood program is surprising. Most campuses don't have one that large. And, you know, I'm impressed with what they're doing.
And it's just amazing. I know I happened to deliver some flowers to someone today, and our ornamental horticulture program does a great job of providing flowers for people on campus.
I get a new set of flowers every week. You know, we purchase weekly, and they're beautiful. They do a good job.
Well, it tries to be a very diverse program that we offer here at Delta College, but with that is the budget challenge and the staffing challenge, because some of the keys become having the faculty that are going to be able to help run these programs. And I know we're very proud of the new additions we have, and I know that's going to be another challenge for us, keeping those full-time entitlements.
Yes, yes.
So some of the things that you've seen at Delta College and some of the wonderful programs that we run here. Now, we're talking about some of the various people who are getting involved in education. You look at President Bush, who is setting his educational programs together. You have Governor Davis, who's putting together his educational programs. Education has become very much of a political animal as much as a production animal. You know, how do you see the politicians and when they get involved with running a college?
My personal feeling is politicians ought to stay out of running college. I frankly think that what happens frequently is the political side of it begins to be the tail that wags the dog. And that's how some of the categorical funds get started and generated. And it means more money for your college, but it also takes away from the growth you need in the general fund account, because they come up with the dollars to support this special program. I'm thinking of what happened a couple of years ago with reducing class sizes. Most districts weren't ready with facilities, didn't have the faculty, but you know, if they wanted the money, they had to do some reducing of class sizes for grades 1, 2, and 3. I don't disagree with the concept, but I kind of disagree that it's politically motivated, and you have to respond in a way that it forces you to do some things you're not ready to do. And I get bothered a little bit about politicians beginning to help you out. It doesn't mean that they don't have good intentions. Doesn't mean that they may have good ideas. But in order to cause something like that to come to a profitable kind of a conclusion, it seems to me like there ought to be more involvement of the people in the field who can make it happen in a timeline that is satisfactory to everybody. I just think that I have a hard time with political aspects in education. Unfortunately, sometimes you find that on boards of trustees. There's a political atmosphere. And really, it should be nonpartisan. We're here all for one purpose, and that is to have students learn. That's really our intent.
Now, as you look back on some of the accomplishments that you've had, I know you've had some tremendous awards at El Camino. What are some of those that you take the greatest pride in, some of the achievements and programs that you've put together?
Well, I suppose there are a lot of positive things that happened, but probably the one that stands out is the fact that El Camino named the library. They had a rehab on the library, and they had a library that had been built as the first building on the campus, and they were anticipating 5,000 students. We were at 25,000, and the library was still the way it was. So we went after some state funds to help us rebuild that. They built a beautiful library, and the Friends of the Library decided to go to the board and ask them to name the library after me. There's 3 facilities on that campus named after people. The rest of them all called Social Science Building or whatever. The football stadium was named after the first president. We have a large auditorium that was named after the second president, and then the library was named after me. So it was a real plus for me. A lot of the other awards had to do with things that I was doing in the community. I was very involved in the community. I got awards from Rotary. I got awards from City Council, awards from YMCA. I was very involved in that, and I believe that that's part of my job as a president, to be out there in the community and be seen and to support the community as much as I can.
So I hope that when you see Dr. Schauerman here on campus or wandering around Stockton that you say hello, or you can contact him here at Delta College by writing him at the Delta College address 5151 Pacific Avenue here in Stockton 95207, or even call him. I mean, it's kind of scary to put his phone number up there, but I know that you're always happy to hear from our local residents about thoughts about Delta College. So I want to thank Dr. Schauerman for joining me. I think we all have a better idea of our new interim president here at Delta, and I encourage you to tune into future impact programs. Thanks for watching.